Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Today we are going to be talking about SQ3R. It is a set of strategies that we can use when we are reading and analyzing literature. It actually helps us with all types of note-taking. If you would for me, please take a moment to get your Google Docs set up. You'll notice here that your name, class, date is in the top corner. SQ3R are going to be our notes. Our essential question for today is how do we take effective notes? How do we take effective notes? Okay. This not only is a note-taking process, but it's also a comprehension process. So how do we take effective notes? Probably our other question would be, what are some strategies to remember and retain our information? So what strategies can we use to comprehend let's say reading. Instead of just literature, let's say reading, because reading will encompass articles, poetry, science methods, historical documents, different types of reading. So if you would for me, please go ahead and pause the video, set up your Google Docs, and you can press play when you are set and ready. Now, SQ3R is just as it sounds. We have S, we have Q, and then we don't have the number 3, we have 3 R's. Okay, we're going to have 3 R's down the way, and we can modify and move these as we need to. When you get a short story, when you get a historical document, when you get a science article, what you do very first and foremost is essentially you scan. Okay? The S stands for scanning. Now, this is not scanning like flip through the pages and just disregard it. Scanning is scanning and looking for information based on certain items. Okay, so I'm going to put over here off to this side. I want to put scan, and then the definition over off to the other side is, let me actually underline these because that will be helpful for you guys. Scanning is based upon what you can tell. Sure, you can scan through and look at the words, but you don't necessarily get the content. Here, you're looking you're looking for information based on headings. Okay, are there certain like chapter titles? Are there illustrations that you can reference to? There's structure or format. Okay, I remember being in science class, my chemistry class specifically, and getting an article to read. And the first thing I would do would be are there any graphs or diagrams or illustrations that will help me kind of get a sense of what this article is about. Okay, so scanning, you look over your notes, you look through and say like, okay, this is rather long. This is not. This has bullet points, right? Maybe you read a historical document and it has like a timeline. Okay, maybe that would be something. Now, along with scanning, the next item that we have is a question. Here, ladies and gentlemen, we question the content based on your scanning. So essentially, you're predicting what will happen. Sometimes you are evaluating as well. Okay, you're kind of judging, oh, this has a lot of information. Oh, there's only one picture when this is a statistics article for math. You kind of predict what's going on, but you kind of begin to question, what is the story about? If I handed you a story called The Most Dangerous Game, you may question, what is the most dangerous game? So looking at that, you begin to question. So you scan through the article, you question what you are reading, and from there, we have our 3 R's. Can anyone guess what the first R is? Hopefully, it's pretty simple. Maybe? Reading. You read. You essentially read the content. I'm going to put down in parentheses that we read and annotate. Annotate is where you mark up the text. There's another video and lesson on this. But reading and annotating really helps you. That's your first step. You begin to process, you get to decode, you get to understand. You essentially read and annotate, very basic. From there, once you're done reading, okay, at this point, our second part would be to review. Sometimes when we take our notes, and we learned about this in our focus notes video, that sometimes the summary is 2 to 3 sentences of review. So like essentially, what did I learn, right? Why is it important? Okay, pretty basic. That's an element of review, okay? So for the second R, review, this is where you offer inference. Inferences is where you make an educated guess based on your knowledge as a whole. Like you kind of infer how a character might have felt. You might infer what was going on in history that wasn't mentioned in the text. You make an educated guess based on information from the content, okay? And that kind of helps you process and infer, or I want to find another word, hypothesize. You kind of collaborate, you kind of come up with this idea about what is happening. So offer inference, okay? At this point, when you review, you also discuss with friends. You discuss with classmates. Okay, discussing with friends or classmates helps you verbally process. It helps you comprehend a little bit better. So this would be when you had just finished watching a television show and you go to tell your friends about the television show, and you recap and you review and you kind of tell the general idea or the main idea of what that show is about. So at this point, you review. So you are essentially going back over that information. You go back over also what you've annotated, okay? And you kind of offer yourself clarity. Offer clarity for the content. So this is like something you don't understand. I've had lots of students who would read a short story and then get to the bottom and be like, wait a second, I don't understand. And they go back and they reread and they're like, oh, this totally makes sense. Like if you're not paying close attention to, I think it's a short story called The Open Window, you miss the entire thing and you have to go back and you have to completely reread. So reviewing helps you process. So get to the end of the document, get to the end of the work, and that's where you would go back and figure it all out. The last R that we have, let me bring this down one. The last R that we have is kind of two of them here, is to recite or to reread. Okay. Now reciting, when we think reciting, that almost sounds like we have to repeat or mimic someone vocally, but that's not the case. Reciting really just means being able to put it into your own words, being able to echo the main ideas and the concepts of that. Usually you can recite something if you've seen it multiple times. So if you go back and you review something multiple times, you then are able to recite it. So here, reread as well. You go back over the material for kind of like our higher level thinking modalities. So you go back over the material for total comprehension. Okay. This is where you finalize clarity. This is where you make like synthesis type ideas or conclusions. Okay. You would apply your knowledge. There we go. Conclusions. You apply knowledge for new analysis. Okay. you begin to kind of engross yourself in the text. So this is where you might look at, like in a historical document, how one or two things could have been affected by another one or two things. You make connections. This is where you go back and reread and discover, oh, I didn't really think about this part. So you begin to go through the text itself and offer up new ideas, make connections. It's only until like the second or third time that you would watch a movie that you would be able to make certain connections for students. So at this moment in time, we have SQ3R. SQ3R, so we've got scan. You review your work, you look over it, you understand what's happening based upon headings, titles, illustrations, how long it is. Most people pick up a book and then they see, it's 300 or 400 pages. And they're like, oh, I don't want that book, right? Second is to question, what is the book about? I like going through a bookstore and looking at books, and I question what the book is about based upon the front cover, right? I look through and I read the back of the book, and I begin to question, wow, what is this really about? How did they get to this point that they're telling me about? I'm going to read and annotate. That's the first thing that I'm going to do. I'm going to review. I'm going to offer inferences. I'm going to make educated guesses. This is where I talk out loud. I verbally process. Let me mark that note down. You guys can mark it down as well. Verbally process. Okay. Gives you another way to think about the book. The last but not least is to recite. So this is where you reread. This is where you go back over the material for total comprehension. This right here is where you have new analysis. This is where you fully understand the text. Okay. So before you go on and do anything else, will you please take a moment and review and write 2 to 3 sentences about what you learned, why it's important. Maybe for this one, you can identify how can I use SQ3R in my different classes, okay, and what you're studying. All right. Thanks so much for joining us on this mini presentation. If you need to go back and review anything so that in case you missed it, please do so. I will talk to you later.